What if one quiet evening turned your whole life upside down? Claire Turner never believed silence could be so heavy. The kind that sits in a room long after laughter has faded, long after someone you love has walked away. That night, the world outside her apartment felt like a soft gray painting. Rain falling in thin streaks, the hum of passing cars echoing through the distance. She sat by the window with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands, her reflection faint in the glass. Calm on the surface, tired underneath. It was one of those evenings when nothing was supposed to happen, but fate rarely asks for permission. The phone buzzed beside her. Once, twice. She almost ignored it, until she saw the name on the screen. Ethan Carter. Her breath caught. For a second, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. Ethan's name, after almost a year of silence, felt like a ghost from a life she had buried. The kind of name that still lived in the corners of her memory, no matter how hard she'd tried to erase it. Her thumb hovered over the answer button. Every heartbeat grew louder than the rain outside. Should she answer? Or let the past die quietly, the way it was supposed to? Curiosity won. Hello? Her voice came out softer than she expected. There was silence. Then a familiar voice, low, calm, but trembling, broke through. Claire. It was him. Ethan. The same tone that once made her laugh in bookstores and whisper in movie theaters. But now it sounded different. Weaker, slower, carrying something heavy behind it. I shouldn't be calling, he said quietly, but I needed to hear your voice. Claire froze. Her grip tightened on the phone. Every emotion she had buried began to surface all at once. The anger, the longing, the confusion. Ethan, she said, trying to sound composed. Why are you calling me after all this time? He took a long breath. She could hear it, that same habit he had before saying something important. Because I need to tell you something before it's too late. Too late. The words hit her like a cold wave. What do you mean? She asked. Too late for what? He didn't answer immediately. Only the faint sound of his breathing filled the line, mixed with the rain tapping against her window. Then he whispered, almost to himself, I made a mistake, Claire, and I can't live with it anymore. Before she could say another word, the line went dead. The sound of the dial tone lingered, sharp and empty. Claire stared at her phone screen, the rain outside blurring the city lights. Her pulse raced as 1,000 questions crashed through her head. What mistake? Why now? Why after everything? She set the phone down, trying to steady her breath. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it wasn't even him. But deep down, she knew that voice. The weight of it. The truth inside it. Ethan never sounded desperate before. Not even when they ended things. Can a single whisper really bring back everything you tried to forget? Claire stood and walked across her apartment, pacing like she used to before big presentations at work. She thought she'd moved on. She'd built a routine. Morning runs, late-night movies, small laughter with friends. Life had been steady. But one call had cracked the calm she spent a year building. She sat back down and replayed his voice in her mind. The pause, the guilt, the sorrow in his tone. Something wasn't right. He wasn't calling to rekindle what they had. This felt different, urgent, final. She tried calling back. No answer. Again. Nothing. The voicemail box picked up, but she couldn't bring herself to leave a message. What would she even say? Hi, Ethan, remember me? The woman you left without a word? Her phone buzzed again. A text this time. Her heart leapt, only to drop when she saw the screen. It wasn't from him. Just a reminder from her calendar. Doctor's appointment tomorrow. Claire laughed bitterly. The universe had a strange sense of timing. She went back to the window. The city was quieter now, the rain softer. In the reflection, she saw the version of herself Ethan had once loved. Calm, confident, hopeful. But behind those eyes was someone else. Someone afraid to open old wounds. They hadn't spoken since the night he left. She remembered it too clearly. The argument wasn't loud. It was the quiet kind. The kind that ends things without either person realizing it yet. He had said he needed time. Space. She had said she would wait. But not forever. Then one morning, he was gone. No note, no message. Just silence. How do you forgive someone who disappears without goodbye? Claire went to bed, but sleep never came. She tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory that had once been locked away. Ethan's voice, his laugh, the way he used to trace circles on her wrist when they talked about their future. Every detail felt painfully alive again. At 2 a.m., she sat up. Enough was enough. She opened her laptop and searched his name. Nothing new. No social media updates, no recent posts. The last picture was from nearly a year ago. Him standing on a cliff near Vancouver, smiling, the ocean behind him. The caption read, "New beginnings, new beginnings." She shut the laptop hard, but then curiosity twisted into something else. Fear. What if something had happened to him? His tone. It didn't sound like a man looking for forgiveness. It sounded like someone saying goodbye. The thought chilled her. She checked her messages again, scrolling through old ones she'd never deleted. Texts from another lifetime. Still at the bookstore, want coffee? You looked beautiful tonight. One day, I'll tell you everything. One day. She stared at those words for a long time. That day had come. A year too late. Would you chase the truth if it might break you again? Morning light crept into her apartment. Claire hadn't slept. Her phone lay beside her pillow, still silent. She tried calling one last time. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. "Ethan, it's me," she whispered, unsure if she even wanted him to hear. "You can't just say something like that and disappear again. What mistake? What's going on? Please call me back." She ended the call and sat still. For the first time in months, tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from confusion that felt like loss all over again. By noon, she couldn't focus on anything else. Work emails went unanswered. She skipped breakfast, then lunch. Every sound, a car horn, a message ping, made her jump. Then, as if the universe had been waiting for the perfect moment, the phone buzzed again. Claire snatched it up, but it wasn't a call. It was a voicemail notification. Her hands trembled as she played it. "Claire," Ethan's voice cracked through static. "If you're hearing this, I guess I couldn't say it properly before. I'm sorry. For leaving, for everything. I'll explain soon, I promise. Just remember what I told you about second chances." That was it. No explanation, no location. Just a haunting promise hanging in the air. Claire sank back into her chair. The words second chances echoed in her mind. It was something he used to say, that everyone deserves one, no matter how broken things are. She didn't know what it meant this time, but deep down, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. A pull. A whisper from the past calling her back. Outside, the rain stopped. The clouds began to break, letting sunlight spill across the glass. But inside Claire's heart, a storm was just beginning to rise. Ethan's voice, that whisper through the phone, had done something she never expected. It had woken her old self, the one who still believed in love that never truly ends. She looked at the city skyline and whispered to herself, "What if he's really gone?" No answer came, only the soft hum of the wind against her window. And yet, Beneath it, she thought she heard it again. Faint, almost impossible, but real enough to send shivers down her spine. A whisper. Her name. Claire. She turned sharply, heart pounding, eyes scanning the quiet apartment. Nothing. Just silence. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. Something was coming. Something tied to that whisper, that mistake, that call, and whatever it was, it had already begun to unravel her world. Can you really forget someone who once knew your soul? The next morning, sunlight spilled through Claire's curtains like nothing had happened. But everything had. She sat on the edge of her bed, her phone still in her hand, waiting for a message that never came. Ethan's voicemail replayed in her mind over and over again. Remember what I told you about second chances? What did he mean by that? Why call after all this time? Why sound so broken? She got up, restless. Her apartment felt smaller than usual, like the walls were closing in. Every object carried a ghost. The mug he once bought her, the book he borrowed and never returned, the sweater that still smelled faintly of his cologne. She had tried to erase him from her life, but now his memory was everywhere, sharp and alive. She made coffee, tried to distract herself, but even the smallest sound reminded her of him. The way the spoon clinked against the cup. It was the same rhythm he used to hum when they sat together in the morning. Claire laughed softly to herself, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Get a grip," she whispered, rubbing her temples. But the more she tried to calm down, the louder her thoughts grew. What if he was in trouble? What if, before it's too late, wasn't just an expression? Her heart told her this wasn't about regret. It was a cry for help. Sometimes the past knocks quietly. Sometimes it kicks down the door. By noon, Claire couldn't focus on anything. She canceled her meetings, ignored her emails, and walked to clear her mind. The air outside was cool, crisp, filled with the smell of wet leaves. The city was moving as if nothing had changed, people rushing, horns blaring, life continuing. But for Claire, time had slowed down. As she walked past the old bookstore on Maple Avenue, she stopped. That's where she'd met Ethan. 3 years ago, he had been standing in the poetry section, flipping through a worn copy of Rilke. She'd accidentally bumped into him, knocking a stack of books from the shelf. He had laughed, not annoyed, but amused, and helped her pick them up. That's how it started. A small moment, a shared laugh, a spark neither of them could ignore. From that day, the bookstore became their place. Rain or shine, they'd meet there, sipping coffee from paper cups, arguing about books and dreaming about trips they never took. Now, standing in front of that same glass door, Claire's chest tightened. She almost turned away, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe fate, made her step inside. The air smelled exactly the same, old paper, dust, and cinnamon from the cafe next door. She walked slowly between the aisles, tracing her fingers along the spines of the books, trying to breathe through the flood of memories. Then she saw it, their corner, a small table near the back, still there untouched. On impulse, she walked over and sat down. Her heart whispered, "What are you doing here?" But her soul answered, "You needed to remember." She closed her eyes, imagining Ethan sitting across from her again, sketching on napkins like he used to. He was an artist, a quiet one, more dreamer than realist. He'd always said he saw the world differently. Maybe that's why he couldn't stay. When she opened her eyes, the chair across from her was empty, of course. But something on the table caught her attention, a folded note tucked under a salt shaker. Her pulse jumped. It was probably nothing, but when she reached for it, her hands trembled. The note was yellowed slightly at the edges, as if it had been there a while. And on the front, written in small, familiar handwriting, was her name, Claire. What if the universe keeps what we're not ready to find, until we are? She unfolded the paper slowly, afraid it might disappear if she moved too fast. Claire, if you ever read this, I'm sorry. Her breath hitched. It was Ethan's handwriting, unmistakable. The same looping letters she'd memorized years ago. I didn't leave because I stopped caring. I left because I was scared, not of you, but of what I felt. It was too real, too strong. I thought walking away would protect us both. But I was wrong. Every day since, I've wondered if you'd ever forgive me. Her eyes filled. She could barely read the rest. If you still care, meet me where it all began. She froze. The message ended there. No date, no signature, no clue. Just that single line. Her mind raced. Where it all began. Did he mean the bookstore? Or something else? She sat there for a long time, staring at the note. 1,000 questions fought for space in her head. Why was it here? How long ago did he write it? And how had no one found it until now? The store clerk passed by and noticed her expression. You okay, miss? Claire nodded faintly, folding the note carefully. Yeah. I just found something I wasn't expecting. The clerk smiled kindly, unaware of the storm behind her calm. Sometimes the universe has its timing, he said, then went back to stacking books. She almost laughed at the coincidence. Timing. That word haunted her now. How many times can you lose the same person before it stops hurting? By evening, Claire sat at her kitchen table, the note spread in front of her like evidence from a mystery she didn't know how to solve. She couldn't stop staring at it. The ink had faded slightly, meaning it wasn't recent. Maybe he left it before he vanished a year ago. Maybe he wanted her to find it when she was ready. But that wasn't the only thing. At the bottom of the page, faintly, in a different shade of pencil, there was another line. One that didn't look like it was written at the same time. It said, If you still care, meet me where it all began, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Her heart skipped. Tomorrow? That meant it was new. Someone had added that line recently. Her hands trembled as she held the note closer to the light. The handwriting matched his. Slightly messier, more rushed, but still his. Could it really be him? Was Ethan back in town? Part of her wanted to believe it. The other part screamed to be cautious. What if it wasn't him? What if someone was playing a cruel joke? But deep down, she knew. No one else knew their story like this. No one else knew this place. It had to be him. Would you risk reopening every wound for one chance at closure? The next morning, Claire barely touched her breakfast. Her mind was already at the bookstore. She told herself not to expect anything, not to hope. But her heart didn't listen. She replayed their last conversation over and over again. The night he left, he had said, "One day you'll understand." Maybe this was that day. She looked at the clock. 3 p.m. 3 hours to go. Time was crawling. She tried to distract herself, cleaning, sorting, anything to fill the silence. But the more she tried to run from her thoughts, the clearer his face became. The smile, the warmth, the sadness in his eyes when he said goodbye. By 5, she was already in her car, driving toward the bookstore. The city lights flickered to life as dusk settled in. Her heart raced with every red light, every turn, every breath. She didn't even know what she'd say if he was really there. Would she forgive him? Or finally ask the question that had haunted her for a year. Why did you leave? She parked across the street, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Through the glass window, the bookstore looked almost empty. Just a few people browsing. No sign of him. Past p.m. She waited. 5, 6 past 10. Her heart began to sink. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she'd misunderstood. Then, just as she was about to leave, she saw movement inside. A man in a dark coat walked to the counter. He said something to the clerk, then looked up. Their eyes met. It was him. Ethan. Older, thinner, but undeniably him. He didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just looked at her. A look filled with too many emotions to name. Then, before she could react, he turned and walked toward the back exit. Ethan. Claire jumped out of the car and ran across the street, her pulse hammering in her ears. She pushed through the door, but when she reached the back alley, he was gone. Only the sound of distant footsteps fading into the rain. She looked around desperately, heart pounding, breath shaking. Then she noticed something small on the ground near the back door. A folded photograph half soaked by the rain. She picked it up. It was a picture of them, smiling, wind in their hair, the lake behind them. On the back, written in the same faint pencil, were 3 words that made her knees weaken. I still care. Her eyes filled with tears as thunder rolled in the distance. He was here, somewhere close, but if he cared, why was he still running? Would you run toward the past if it called your name? The rain had stopped by morning, but the world still looked washed in gray. Claire stood by her apartment window again, watching clouds drift across the sky. On the table behind her lay the photograph, the one Ethan had dropped, still damp at the edges. She hadn't slept all night. Her mind kept replaying that moment outside the bookstore. His face, that look in his eyes, the way he vanished into the rain before she could reach him. He was alive. Real. Here. And yet, still running, she turned the photograph over again, tracing the words with her thumb. I still care. It wasn't much, but to her, it was everything. A sign that something unfinished still waited between them. But it also raised questions she wasn't ready for. If he cared, why disappear again? Why hide instead of staying to talk? As she stared at the photo, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her pulse jumped. She hesitated, then answered. Claire. The voice was quiet, cautious, unmistakably his. Ethan. Ethan? She whispered, her heart racing. Where are you? Why did you run away last night? I shouldn't have come, he said softly. You weren't supposed to see me. Not yet. What does that even mean? She asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. You left me without a word, then you show up, leave a note, a photo, and vanish again. What's going on? He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone was heavy. There are things you don't know, Claire. Things I can't explain on the phone. Meet me tomorrow. The coffee shop by the lake. 6 p.m. And just like that, the line went dead. She stood there frozen, phone pressed to her ear, the sound of his last words echoing through her. The coffee shop by the lake, their place. The place where their story had truly begun. How do you prepare your heart for the moment it might break again? The next day dragged endlessly. Claire couldn't focus on work or food or anything that resembled normal life. Her body was here, but her mind was already at the lake. Every hour felt longer than the last. She didn't even tell anyone about the call. How could she? Who would understand a love that kept returning like a ghost refusing to rest? By the time the clock hit 5, her pulse had already doubled. She put on her coat, took the photograph, and drove through the winding roads leading out of town. The sky hung low, streaked with soft gray clouds, and the trees glistened from last night's rain. The lake came into view. Wide, quiet, and calm. The coffee shop sat by the water's edge, its windows glowing faintly in the dusk. Nothing had changed. It looked exactly the same as the day she last saw him here. The day he had promised her everything, then walked away without a reason. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the door. The bell above it chimed softly, the same familiar sound. The smell of cinnamon and coffee filled the air. For a second, she almost felt like she had stepped into the past. The same music played, the same soft hum of chatter, and the same table by the window. Their table. She walked over and sat down, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The door opened. Ethan stepped in. He looked older, not just by time, but by weight. His hair was shorter, his eyes darker, his face a little thinner. But the moment their eyes met, everything inside her stopped. It was him, completely him. He approached slowly, as if afraid she might disappear if he moved too fast. You came, he said, his voice soft, full of quiet relief. I almost didn't, she replied, her throat tight. You don't get to vanish and then expect me to show up like nothing happened. He nodded. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to listen. Sometimes love returns only to say what it couldn't before. Ethan sat across from her, just like before. Same table, same distance, but a world of silence between them. The barista brought them coffee, though neither touched it. Claire's eyes never left him, Why did you leave? She asked finally. You said you loved me, Ethan. You made me believe we had a future. Then you disappeared. No message. No closure, nothing. Why? He looked down at his hands, then back at her. Because I was scared. Not of you, of me. I thought I could outrun the truth, but I couldn't. What truth? She demanded. He took a deep breath. The truth is I wasn't who you thought I was. I was dealing with something I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't want to drag you into it, she frowned. Ethan, if you think protecting me means lying to me, then you never really knew me. He smiled faintly. Sad. Broken. You're right. But back then, I wasn't strong enough to face you. I thought disappearing would make it easier. For both of us. It didn't, she said quietly. It just made the silence louder. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world outside the window moved in slow motion. Raindrops tracing down the glass, people walking by, the reflection of the lake shimmering. Then Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small photograph. The same one she'd found in the alley, but dry and clean. He placed it gently on the table. I kept a copy, he said, because this was the last moment I remember being happy. Claire stared at it, her heart twisting. You didn't need to disappear to hold on to a memory, she said softly. He looked at her, eyes full of something she couldn't read. Guilt, sadness, maybe both. I know, but some memories hurt more when they're too close. What if love's return hides a secret it can't reveal? Claire leaned back, trying to breathe through the ache in her chest. Something in his eyes unsettled her, like he was carrying more than regret. What is it you're not telling me? She asked. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. It's not something I can explain here. Then when? She pressed. You can't just keep running, Ethan. Not again. I'm not running, he said firmly. Not this time. But there's more to this than you think. You just have to trust me. After everything, she said, voice trembling. You want me to trust you after you vanished for a year? I'm asking you to believe that I never stopped caring, he said quietly. Even when I wasn't here. Her eyes stung. You think that makes it easier? Knowing you cared but still left? He looked down, his hands trembling slightly. No, it makes it harder. A long silence followed. The air between them felt thick with unsaid things. Finally, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, hesitant, searching. The touch was electric, familiar, and terrifying. Claire, he whispered. If I disappear again, it won't be by choice. She froze. What does that mean? But before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed instantly. Panic. I have to go, he said, standing abruptly. Ethan, wait. She reached out, but he pulled away gently. I'll explain soon, he said quickly. I promise, Ethan, she called out as he turned for the door. Don't do this again. Don't leave me in the dark. He paused for a heartbeat, his back to her. Then, without turning around, he said softly, I never stopped loving you, Claire. And he was gone. How do you chase someone who keeps running from the truth? Claire sat frozen, her hand still outstretched, the sound of the door chime fading behind him. The barista glanced at her curiously, but she didn't move. Her coffee had gone cold. Her heart felt the same. She didn't even know if she should be angry or heartbroken. Maybe both. All she knew was that she wasn't ready to lose him again, not without answers. She stood abruptly, grabbed her bag, and ran outside. The street was empty. No sign of him. Only a faint echo of hurried footsteps, and the drizzle beginning to fall again. Something inside her snapped, not in anger, but in resolve. If he wouldn't tell her what was happening, she'd find out herself. She walked back toward her car, heart pounding, when she noticed something fluttering near the bench by the lake. A small folded piece of paper weighed down by a smooth stone. Her fingers shook as she picked it up. Inside was a short note, written in Ethan's hurried handwriting. I didn't want to bring you into this, but it's too late now. If you really want to know the truth, come to the old pier tomorrow at dawn. Don't tell anyone. She looked up at the lake, calm, silent, hiding secrets beneath its surface. The paper trembled in her hands as the wind picked up. Whatever Ethan was hiding, It wasn't just about love. Sometimes love doesn't disappear. It just waits for the courage to return. The morning air was cold enough to sting. Mist hung low over the lake like a secret trying to hide itself. Claire stood at the edge of the old wooden pier, her coat pulled tight, her heart racing. The world was quiet except for the sound of gentle waves brushing against the shore. She kept glancing at her phone. 6:01 a.m. Ethan had said dawn. He was late. The last time she saw him, he'd vanished again after promising answers. Now, after a sleepless night of questions, she was here. Back where their love began. Back where maybe it would finally end. She gripped the note he'd left her by the bench. If you really want to know the truth, come to the old pier at dawn. Every word had been replaying in her mind for hours. She wasn't sure what she expected. An explanation, an apology, maybe even closure. But deep down, she felt something else stirring, fear. Whatever secret he'd been hiding wasn't just about love. It was something darker. Would you still love someone if their truth could break you? Footsteps echoed softly on the wooden planks behind her. Claire turned, and there he was. Ethan. He looked tired, his face pale, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. But when their eyes met, something in her chest loosened. You came, he said, his voice rough, almost fragile. I said I would, she replied quietly. You owe me the truth, Ethan. No more running. He nodded, walked to the edge of the pier, and stared out at the water. I never wanted to drag you into this, he said. That's why I disappeared. That's why I couldn't stay. Claire's hands clenched. Into what? You keep saying that like it explains everything. You loved me. Then you vanished. You show up again, leave me letters, photos, whispers, but no answers. You can't keep doing this to me. He turned to face her. His eyes were filled with something she hadn't seen before. Fear. Real, trembling fear. Claire, I'm sick, he said finally. Her breath caught. What do you mean? He swallowed hard. Last year, right after I left, I was diagnosed. It's serious. I didn't want you to find out. I didn't want pity. I didn't want you to see me like that. She took a step closer, shaking her head. So you just walked away? You thought that was easier than letting me choose to stay? His voice broke. Yes. Because I didn't want your life to stop because of me. Claire's eyes filled with tears. You never gave me the chance to decide. He looked down, unable to meet her gaze. I know, and that's the mistake I've been trying to fix ever since. When love is real, even time can't silence it. They stood in silence, the lake wind carrying every unspoken word between them. How bad is it? Claire asked finally. Ethan sighed. It's not something that can be fixed. I've been getting treatment, but it's spreading. The doctors say I have months, maybe less. Her heart cracked like glass. Ethan? I didn't call to ask for sympathy, he said quickly. I called because I couldn't stand knowing I'd left you without the truth. You deserved that much. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. All I ever wanted was honesty. You didn't have to protect me. I would have stayed. He looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes were wet, but there was a faint smile on his lips. I know you would have. That's what scared me most. Claire felt tears sting her cheeks. You're impossible, she whispered, half laughing through the ache. You think love is a burden. It's not. It's a choice. And I still choose you. Ethan's breath hitched. He took her hand. Fragile, warm, desperate. You don't have to. I already did, she said softly. He looked like he wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, he just pulled her into a hug, the kind that said everything words couldn't. The kind that felt like time stopping, even if just for a moment. What do you do when love gives you goodbye disguised as a second chance? They sat at the edge of the pier, legs hanging over the water, fingers entwined. The sun began to rise, soft gold spreading across the lake. It looked like any other morning, yet it felt like the last one they might share. I wanted to tell you sooner, Ethan said quietly, but when I heard your voice on the phone that night, it all came back. Every memory, every reason I loved you. I couldn't say it over the phone. Claire smiled faintly through tears. You always did make things complicated. Maybe, he said. But I needed to see you once more. To say goodbye properly this time. She turned to him sharply. No, don't say goodbye, not yet. We just found each other again. Ethan reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek. Sometimes finding someone again is the goodbye. I just wanted you to know I never stopped loving you. Not even for a day. Her voice cracked. Then don't leave me again. Please. He looked at her with such softness it broke her heart. If I could stay, I would. You know that. The wind picked up, rustling the water in her hair. For a moment, it felt like the whole world held its breath. Then Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I wrote you something, he said, for when I'm gone. But I want you to open it later, not now, she hesitated. What is it? He smiled weakly. A reminder that love doesn't end. It just changes form. Some goodbyes don't end in silence. They echo through memory. Claire took the envelope with trembling hands. She didn't want it. She didn't want to think of a world without him. Promise me you'll keep living, Ethan said, voice soft but steady. Go places we talked about. Finish your book. Fall in love again when you're ready. Promise me you won't let my story end yours. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. Don't talk like that. I have to, he said gently. Because love isn't about holding on. It's about setting free. She wanted to argue, to scream that he was wrong, that they could still fight this. But the truth was there in his eyes. He was tired. The kind of tired that comes from more than pain. The tiredness of someone who has accepted fate. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers. You'll hear me in the wind, he whispered. When it moves across the water, that's where I'll be. And then he kissed her. Slow, tender, final. The kind of kiss that seals a lifetime in a single breath. The heart remembers even when the world moves on. Days passed after that morning, each one heavier than the last. Ethan stopped answering calls. She tried his number again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. The silence told her everything she didn't want to know. A week later, she received a small brown envelope in the mail. No return address, just her name. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter and a pressed lavender flower. Claire, it read. If you're reading this, it means I'm finally at peace. I didn't want our story to end with sorrow. I wanted it to end with love. You taught me what that word really means. Not the kind that demands, but the kind that forgives. When you look at the lake, think of me smiling. I'll always be there, whispering your name. Her tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. Can love survive even when the voice that spoke it is gone? Weeks turned into months. The world went on. Work, laughter, sunlight. But for Claire, everything carried a quiet echo. Sometimes she'd drive to the lake and sit by the window of the coffee shop. The same one they'd shared countless mornings in. She'd place the letter beside her cup, look at the empty chair across from her, and close her eyes. The soft breeze would move through the open window, and for a moment, just a fleeting second, she could almost hear him again. Claire. A whisper. Gentle. Familiar. She smiled through the ache, whispering back, I know. She didn't know if it was imagination or something deeper, but it didn't matter. Love doesn't end when life does. It lingers, it heals, it whispers, sometimes through wind, sometimes through memory. As the sun dipped behind the lake, she tucked the letter back into her bag and stood. I'll be okay, she said softly, as if to him. The wind answered with a faint rustle, quiet, tender, like a goodbye carried through time. And for the first time since he called her that night, Claire didn't feel broken. She felt whole, not because she'd moved on, but because she finally understood. Love doesn't fade. It transforms,